Hi, and welcome everyone to Josefine Meets. And today I'm here with Ken Westgaard, who is a Norwegian. So we have a Scandinavian touch today, but we are going to do this in English, so don't worry about that, unless you're from Sweden or Norway, of course. So I see we have someone watching already. So welcome to this Josefine Meets. If you have any questions or any comments or want to add anything, please do so, because we want to do this as interactive as possible. If you are watching this as a replay, because we're streaming this live to the Facebook group, we're streaming this to LinkedIn and to my YouTube channel. If you're watching the replay of this, please add a hashtag replay so that Ken and I can pick up on any questions that you might have afterwards. So feel free to add questions, even if you're watching the replay of this. But now I'm going to I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Ken, actually. So Ken, please enter the stage and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Ken Westgaard, and I am from Norway, like you just said. I help online coaches grow and scale their business with fun and simple money-making launches, and that's a short version, obviously. But as we know, there's a lot to launches. It's not always as simple as it seems, but we can always make it easier and simpler than we do a lot of times.
Yeah, I've done seven of them myself, so I definitely know they can be done in an easy way and a more difficult way. And I also think a little bit, depending on how much because you can add on and add on and add on, and you can do DM outreach and whatever. But if we take it back a little bit, because you haven't always been a launch coach, you were in business, or you were in corporate. And then I think you started your podcast, because you're also a podcast host. We need to say that to your podcast host. So you started your podcast as a side hustle, and then you moved, or how was the story there?
Well, the story kind of begins I think it's almost 8 years ago now. So time flies, by the way. Where I kind of basically started with web design, graphic design, those kind of things, and being naive and thinking that everybody needs this, so it's not a problem to start a business. But as you know, people don't come running and knocking at your door. You actually have to find those clients, and I didn't. So suddenly I was there and it's like, oh, where are all the clients? Because I was living off, the typical, a word of mouth kind of a thing. But suddenly that dried up, and then, kind of hit the wall with that. But, and then I moved into conversion optimization. I was doing a little bit about that. And then I went into email marketing for a little while until I finally figured out that, this is not necessarily what I want to do. And also I had a membership at the time for the email marketing. And one of the members told me basically straight out that, it doesn't feel like your heart is into this. And she really nailed it, because it wasn't. So I had to take a moment kind of doing this list of, okay, what do I want to do? What don't I want to do? And then that kind of led me into, oh, I'm actually helping people launch. And that was kind of like the beginning of the launch journey. But that's probably, how long is that now? 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I think. Yeah.
And I think that is so important. What you're saying is that, we start working with people, or we start working on something. I also started with a different ideal client definition that I have now. I also started with a different service than what I have now, because I thought that was what I should do. What I was, I should help corporate women who were in the same position that I was. And then it takes a while to say, okay, but these are not my people. They are, I call them my trigger clients, but I want to work with my ideal clients. So that takes some time to actually get to that. And I think that was kind of like really also kind of brave of you to listen to that client who said it doesn't feel as if your heart is in it. Because what we tend to do then is actually to defend ourselves. Say, oh, no. I love what I'm doing.
Well, trust me, I definitely spent 20 minutes, crying my eyes out and why is this happening to me? All the terrible questions you can ask. But I, thank God that I was in James Wetmore's BBD, because that kind of helped me with the mindset stuff of, maybe that's not the right question to ask. So let's look at this a little bit differently. Okay, maybe she is right. Well, then what do we do then? How can we look at this differently? And that kind of led me down a whole different path, like I said. And, it's been a lot of listening to my intuition, just going with that gut feeling, and it was a birth of the podcast. Just you know 4 months later, I think ish.
Mhm. Mhm.
So and that kind of snowballed everything. So just everything was launching. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's been a journey, like I said, and it's continued to evolve and change, and I think people get a lot of hangups on that they, when things shift or change, they feel like they're starting over again, but they don't necessarily do that. It's just, it's an evolution of where we are on our journey. We gain so much knowledge and things change. So, and it's okay. But you have a lot of knowledge already. You're not starting from scratch.
And I mean, your whole story about email marketing, that is so useful in the launching too, because launching, yes, it is kind of like a little bit of an isolated happening, but there are so much things happening before, and then you have the launch itself, but then things happening afterwards. So it's not just, those, depending on how long the launch is, if it's like a, I don't know, 90 minutes, or if it's like a 9-day launch, it's not as if that's it. So
Hmm.
can you take us through a little bit the process as you see it? Where does it start? Where is the middle? And where does it end when we talk about launching?
Well, a lot of times when we talk about launch, people think about, the time from when you open up the carts and you open up the doors to your program, course, or membership. Then you close it, a few days later, a few weeks later, depending on how long you do have that open.
Mm.
Uh, but honestly, there's a lot more to it. Obviously, you have something happening after launch, because then you're welcoming you members or students, and you might have some upsells or downsells. You're maybe putting out a survey to get some feedback on why people didn't join or why they did join. And then obviously there's something happening before, because then that's kind of where you have the event of your launch, whether that's a webinar, challenge, um, live launch, 3-day workshop, whatever. But there's also a lot of things happening way before that too, which is the launch runway. And that's
Mhm.
basically where you build up, the demand and desire and expectation of the launch, basically. So,
Mhm.
and that can, vary a lot depending uh, on your launch, basically. But typically, it's anywhere from 60 to 90 days. So it's basically from time when you end the previous launch till you start up the new launch. Obviously, there's a little bit downtime there, but usually it's kind of continuous. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a comment here that is related to the before, what we discussed before. So true, change is inevitable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is. I'm pulling that out. Yeah. So if we talk about the launch runway,
Mhm.
up until the launch, what are the things, if someone has never launched before, what are the things, and I know we're not going to do kind of like a detailed training on launching here, because that's what they need to go to you for, but just get someone an idea of, because there are people here who never heard about launching, it doesn't know
Mhm.
what it is, so why would you even do a launch? So maybe first, okay, so let's talk about, why would someone even do a launch? What are the benefits of launching?
Well, the main benefit is obviously it's, you can reach a lot more people doing the same amount of work. It doesn't matter if you have like 10 people in your launch or you have 10,000 people, you're still doing the same exact work. So it's extremely scalable. So it's easy for you to kind of grow with launches. And honestly, that's the one big number one reason why you should be launching, because you can reach so much more people, but you don't have to do any more work. You're just doing that one webinar, and you can have as many people in that as you want, and then you can just sell to those people.
Hmm. Exactly. And it's like, I also love launches because I love the energy that you have in them. I'm a little bit of a sucker for a work for workshops. But since it is so much energy, and I give so much during the pre kind of like the period before, during the launch, it totally drains me. Like, it's like afterwards I'm like totally deflated. But
Mhm.
if we start with the runway, if we start there, so what are the things that, let's assume you have a small email list, or someone has some people on Instagram, how will they get people into their launch?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of ways to do that. First thing is to obviously figure out, what kind of event do you want to be hosting? Do you want it to be a webinar? Do you want it to be a challenge? Do you want a workshop? and just figure out that first, obviously. But once you kind of do that, then you kind of want to guide them into joining or being there live when you're actually doing that event. And you can do that straight through social media, guide them straight to the registration page for that, or you can send out emails and have them on the email list. It doesn't really matter because it's, the launch runway is a lot about, you know, addressing the problems that people are experiencing. So you got to,
Hmm.
a lot of times we tend to talk about solutions that we have. So we think that the people know the problems and they just want solution. But the thing is, it's not always that they are so extremely aware of the problems, but they will recognize it if you point it out to them. It's like when you describe the problem they're experiencing, it's like, they're going to be like, "Oh, right, yeah, that's true, that's me," and that's kind of
Exactly.
where you want it to be because you want them to say that they
Yeah.
want to identify with the problems that you see them having. So once you do that, obviously, it's easier to kind of get them to, well, I have the solution, and we're going to talk about that on the webinar, and then they're going to get more excited to join the webinar, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I also think it's so this my last launch, I only did organic outreach, which was a little bit different. It is a lot of work because what you do is you send emails, we send direct messages to people, inviting them
Hmm.
to the workshop, and it is a little bit, coming from this feeling of being salesy, because that is in the end that is where we want to lead them, because it is the funnel, right? We want
Right.
them to, of course we want to help them, of course we want to solve their problem, but we also kind of like want to make money out of the launch, right? So that is, I think that is a big challenge to say, okay, so oh my god, and now I have my, I have my challenge or I have my workshop or whatever it might be, I hope they don't feel that I'm salesy. How would you say, and I know it's a mindset thing, right, but how
Right.
how would you address that if someone says to, oh no, Ken, I don't want to invite anyone, I feel so salesy.
Right. Well, first of all, you're doing a disservice if you're not helping or reaching out to people, inviting them to be on this launch. And first of all, it is, when we get to the sale, it's an offer. We put out an offer for them to, decide whether they want to be part of it or not.
Mm,
And I like to compare it like if you're inviting people or your friends to the movies, right? You ask them, do you want to go to the movies? We're going to watch this movie, blah blah blah. And, some people might say, "Yeah, cool. I want to I want to join you." Or some people might say, "Well, no, sorry, can't do it this time. I can't afford it." Blah blah blah. Tons of reasons. But
I've already seen that one. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but you're
definitely.
not gonna you're
Yeah,
not gonna get upset if they say no. You're just gonna, okay, cool. Well, maybe next time, right? And
yeah.
that's the same way with
And they are
the
also
launch.
not upset that you're asking them
No,
if you want to join
they
them. Oh,
appreciate
that's
it.
it. I love that analogy. I'm going to steal that one from you. That one is a great one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. It's an offer. It's nothing more than an offer for you or for them to get help from you, basically. And you have the
Hmm.
solution to the problem because you kind of talked about that as well. So it's really all about that. But I mean, it's salesy, yeah. I want to say that in order for you to help people, your business needs to make money. Otherwise, it's
Mm,
just a hobby, in my opinion,
mm,
if you're not
mm,
making money. And the money is just a tool for you to help more people. Because when you get more money, you can reach out to more people, and that means you can help more people. So if
mm,
you kind of look at it from that point of view as well, it kind of shifts the perspective you have on selling. Yeah, we're
mhm.
selling, but we want to make money, but it is to because we have a big heart and we want to help more people.
Yeah. I actually had a discussion with someone earlier today who attended my workshop, and he said it was so helpful. And that is amazing feedback that you can get, because I think the market has been a little bit flooded with all of this, a lot of fluff
Hmm.
currently, which kind of like ruins a lot for everyone who wants to do a good job, who wants to help others, who wants to build a kind of like a successful business where we help others.
Hmm.
But it's difficult, and I think the market will self-regulate a little bit, so that those who do a lot of fluff, I hope they will have problems in gaining more attraction, and that those of us who don't do fluff, yeah, let
Yeah,
it make that we continue to grow. So I think
absolutely.
that is, I also would say that the more workshops we do, or I call them workshops, but the more launches we do, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, everything is about experience, and the more you do it, the more you are okay with how things unfold. And the thing with launching, it's a lot about testing,
Mm,
experimenting, trying things out. Some things will work, some things won't work, obviously.
mm,
And it's and in my opinion, it has a lot to do with energy when you show up in the
yeah.
launch. And that goes back to some of the main fundamental things that I look at in a launch. It's messaging, that you have
Hmm.
dialed in your messaging. You can get behind your message, and you truly believe in the things you say. You have the values, and you know that it speaks to your audience, obviously. And then you also need to have what I call $1 million offer. Now, it doesn't have to be like it's going to make you a million, but it needs to feel like it's $1 million. You know that this offer is going to help so many people, and you know that you love it, your audience will love it. Yeah. And then that's the energy that you kind of want to have it when you go into the launch, obviously. And that makes it a lot easier when you kind of get to the pitch in your launch or in your webinar,
Yeah.
because you believe in your own offer. So it makes kind of a little bit easier to kind of go from teaching to selling.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And and if we just kind of take go back a little bit to when I launched, I had one launch a year and a half ago, something like that, where I wanted to kind of, I had the people that weren't my ideal clients on the launch. I was promoting an offer that I didn't want to promote
Mm.
really. I didn't know that at the time, but when I sat there and I was like, "Oh yeah, so we have a Q&A tomorrow," and of course, no one showed up to the Q&A, and I was like,
Right.
"Of course, no one showed up because I didn't even want to be there." And I
Right.
think that is so important. That is so key. So that
Hmm.
was my moment when I said, I need to take a step back. This is not working. It's not working for me. It's not the people that I want to work with. It's not the outcome that I want to help them get.
Yep.
So that is so important, these key moments, and to have a high energy.
Yeah.
I know that you just you're a coach in Brandon Lucero's team, and you guys just had an amazing launch. What would be the difference, would you say, between someone who's just starting out with launches compared to that 7-figure launch that you guys just had?
Well,
Except that you have a bigger team, but
yeah, I was gonna say
if
that,
you
that's like the
yeah.
only difference, is that they have a big team, and obviously have a lot of people helping you, and they can, handle more people in their launch, basically.
Mm,
It's hard to, have 5,000 people in your launch or more, if you're just you alone, obviously.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
the basics, the fundamental, the key elements, all of that stuff, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if a 7-figure launch or 4-figure launch, or just a couple $100. It's the same thing. It's messaging. It's the foundational thing about everything, and then you obviously need to have a good offer, and then it's about the energy, in my opinion. If you show up and you have tons of energy and you just going all out, people are going to pick up on that, and they're just going to get behind you, and they want to buy by the end of it. And then that's
Even if
that's what
they're not
happened
ready
with
to
Brandon's
buy,
launch.
yeah, yeah. And even if they're not ready to buy in that exact moment, they
Mhm.
might be ready to buy in a different moment. One of my
Absolutely.
business mentors that I have, I attended 3 of her launches before I decided to join her.
Mhm.
So that is kind of like also, so if someone joins your launch but they don't buy that time, don't worry so much about it. Just continue nurturing them, continue to be there for them, and then it will sort itself out. So
Absolutely.
how do you help people that say, oh, you know what, I have my offer, I have my $1 million offer, but I want to kind of like present it to a bigger audience? How do you help people?
Well, obviously, the first thing we need to look at is messaging, because if the messaging is off, well, then obviously you're not going to attract the audience that you want to have in your audience.
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about the ideal audience, and with the right messaging, you will get those people, and those people are probably more qualified in terms of buying when you do launch. But then obviously, the messaging needs to connect with the offer, and and then the energy. It's like that. This is what I call the launching by choice method. Is you got to have the messaging, the offer, and the energy. And if one of them are missing, I mean, yes, you will have some sales, even if you're missing just one of them, but you will not, get those exponential growth in your launches if you have all three of them. That will help a lot, obviously.
Mm. Do you think you have to have a big audience before you launch?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's more about having the right people versus, let's say you have 100 people that are your ideal audience versus just 1,000 people of random people. Obviously, I think the 100 people is going to do a lot better, but you don't have to have a big launch. I mean, I've seen people do launches in a lot of different ways with different types of audiences. Some people think that you need to have like 100,000 people following you on Instagram, but you can do that with, less than 1,000, maybe just a few hundred, and you can still have a great launch. But obviously, you do need to do something to build that audience, because you can't always rely on the same people buying your stuff, because at some point you will exhaust that audience. So you need to get a new audience at some point. But that's about reaching more people and maybe spending some money on ads. But that obviously is not necessary either if you're starting out. So you can start with the organic, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a question that kind of we spoke before we jumped on, or before we went live. We spoke about Facebook groups and pop-up groups, and I actually tried a pop-up group in my was it launched some months ago, but I didn't have that many people joining the launch, and then you have the people. You always miss a lot of people or not a lot, but you miss some people in between, from the registration to your email list into the Facebook group.
Of course.
Yep. When would you say that it's okay to use a pop-up group, and when do you say you should start building up a Facebook group and continue nurturing the people in that one?
That's a great question, actually. I don't know if there's a definite answer on that. But obviously, the smaller the group is, the less engagement you might expect. And obviously, you do want some engagement, because Facebook do favor engagement. So when you have a Facebook group where there's a lot of engagement, there's more likely to end up in the news feed of the people who are in the group. So, that's definitely something to think about. And maybe it's not the right thing to start off, when you're starting out with launches. It might be better to just use email and, combine it with some social media maybe. And then even maybe if you're good at it, spend some money on ads. But I would say that at least, get 100 people in the Facebook group. That's just me guessing, to be honest. But I would say at least have 100 people in there. So you have some people to engage with, so you can get that group going, obviously. But I mean, Facebook groups it's golden in terms of, getting that engagement and interacting with people and, helping them even further than just through emails and social media, obviously, because we definitely saw that with Brandon's launch. Obviously, he had a big group. I think it was 5,000 people, and there was a ton of engagement. But obviously, Brandon does a really good job of making sure those people are engaged all the way through. I mean, even before he started the pre-launch 3-day live, I mean, even a couple of weeks before that, he had some things going on to interact with people, getting them engaged, getting them some wins, quick results and stuff like that. So, I mean, once we master that, it's a good resource to have.
And he should know he's a messaging master. Or the what you're selling is, or what you guys were selling was messaging, how to get the messaging right. So and I think it's kind of like it's so important, as you said, to have the mindset and the energy and the product itself. So I had January 2021, I had a surgery, and during that surgery I started doubting everything. I started doubting the leads coming in. I started doubting the effectiveness of my program. I started doubting everything. I had to postpone my launch because of my surgery and things like that. So that whole thing pulled down kind of like the whole conversion, of course, of I sold one to a person who had been a one-to-one client. So that is kind of like who knew about me, who knew who I was and the effectiveness of my program. So the whole mindset thing of believing in yourself is so important too. So how do you support people to really stay on top of kind of their game?
Well, obviously, it's hard to do that when you're alone. I mean, if you have
Yeah.
nobody supporting you or you don't have anyone to turn to, it's hard because launching is an emotional, just I mean, both physically and mentally. It takes up a lot of energy from you, obviously. And we're humans and we doubt ourselves all the time, and we are so afraid of being judged one way or the other. There's a lot of fear, and we tend to get in our own way. Basically, we're sabotaging ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I did one exercise that I've learned from one of my mentors and coaches is to we tend to think about what if I launch this and it fails, or what if I launch it and nobody's gonna show up live, or nobody buys, or blah blah blah, all of that stuff, and it's so negative, and that obviously makes us doubt ourselves. But if you flip that and we think about, well, what if I do this and I end up helping 10 people
Yeah.
change their lives, and what if this is the beginning of my signature course, which is going to be huge success 5 years from now, making me millions of dollars, or it's enabling me to build our dream house, or if we start playing with it in a positive way and seeing what opportunities is behind the what
Mm-hmm.
if,
Mm-hmm.
that changes the game a lot, because then it becomes about positive opportunities versus negative things happening, or could happen. Obviously, they could still happen, but who cares? I mean,
Exactly.
it's
I,
just do it again.
Yeah, I remember that also from one of my business. One business mentor said, "No, no, no, you have to do one-to-ones. You have to do the one-to-ones." And I was like, I don't want to do one-to-ones." Yeah, but you have to do one-to-ones. And that also impacted my sales on the one-to-ones because I didn't really want to do them, right?
Hmm.
And then I had one businessman, because she also said it would be so embarrassing if you start a group coaching program, you only have one person join. And then I signed up with my other business mentor and I said, well, what happens? What happens if only one person joins in my launch? That is so embarrassing. And she was like, well, that's the best thing for them, because they get one-to-one to a price point of a group coaching program.
Yeah.
And that mindset shift is it's so important to say, you're not giving up. It's just you serve people in a different way. And
Hmm.
it's just amazing. And it's so important to have that independently, as you said before, independently of how it turns out, it's anyways a win. You're anyways going to learn from it. And as long as you don't even try to do it or don't even dare to do it, independently, if it's like kicking off a market research or kicking off a launch or whatever it might be, as long as you don't dare to do these things, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to change.
Yeah. And the only one who thinks it's embarrassing is you, because you think it's embarrassing. But for the other people, it's like, oh, amazing, I get to be coach one-on-one with you instead of having a
Yeah,
lot of people fighting over you. But yeah, and it's you miss all the shots that you don't take. It's really
yeah,
that simple. So if you don't launch, well, definitely your launch is going to fail because you didn't launch. So there you go. And I personally bailed on the launch. I cut it, stopped the launch in the middle of launch because no one's buying. It's like, oh, why bother? Nobody's buying anyway. Who's going to care? And I did it. But I don't recommend it, because if you finish a launch, obviously then you have some data and you can look back at things and you can learn from it, obviously. But
yeah.
yeah, I've done it. So if you're there, don't do it, but go through with it. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that is, we learn from everything. And that
absolutely.
is also why we teach the mistakes that we have made, so that others don't necessarily need to repeat the mistakes
Hmm.
that we have done ourselves. So I think that is amazing. So how can people connect with you? I don't think you're on LinkedIn, because otherwise I would
No,
have tagged you. So, but how can people connect with you?
I'm on Instagram mostly. So it's at Ken Westgaard, just my name. And I have my website, obviously, kenwestgaard.com. And but yeah, Instagram's where I hang out. Just shoot me a DM if you have any questions. Happy to answer any of them.
That is so cool. And I think I added your opt-in or your freebie. I think I added that anyway, so that people can
Yep.
download that, learn from Ken, take this opportunity. You will not so often have an opportunity to learn from a coach who has just been in a 7-figure launch. So take this opportunity to learn from him, connect with him, ask him all the questions you might have. And he's a really nice guy, a really open Scandinavian guy. Most of us are open and fun, I would say. So please do that. And if you have any questions, please shoot them over, add them in the comments, and Ken and I will be happy to answer to them. But with that, I say thank you and goodbye for this time.